to discuss how we pivot against COVID-19. I know that myself, I work in the healthcare industry, so this conversation is no more prevalent for me today still than it is for everyone. We've seen a lot of challenges over the last year, 18 months of our lives, and we are starting to come out the other side. So I think it's always a great time to take a pen and look back and really think about what we did, because these are the lessons that are going to frame us as workers in our lives going forward. So I'm really excited about today. So just a couple quick announcements. I would challenge you guys, if you have the ability to please turn on your cameras. It helps so much when you're speaking to have someone to speak to. Just like if we were in a space together, it helps seeing how the audience is reacting. And it also helps me when my camera's on to be more focused on what I'm listening to and less likely to work on other things. So if you have that ability, I'd really challenge you to do that. And then I also will remind you, and I'll put the link in the chat, check out PMI CIC, where we have lots of events like this. We have lunch and learns. This is our first breakfast event since COVID has hit. And then we have our chapter meetings. Actually, Barbara is going to be coming to us in May and speaking. So I'm getting that event up this week and going, so you'll be able to register for that. So again, thank you, everyone. I'm pretty excited to hear what everyone's learned and how we've pivoted over the last year. So thank you.
Thank you, Pam. Good morning, everyone. My name is Bobby Taruk. I'm the VP for Publicity, Marketing, and Social Media. I want to thank the speakers for investing their time with our chapter today. I really do appreciate it. With us today as well, Laszlo will do the introductions for the speakers, but I get the privilege of introducing Laszlo. He is the CEO of Next Era Transformation Group. He's been actively involved in the PMI community for over 15 years, in addition to serving as a chair for the PMI Chicago Executive Council for 4 years. And I've seen Laszlo moderate and participate in a lot of the PMI events from a distance, and I just appreciate him so much. So without further ado, let's welcome Laszlo, please. Let's give him a hand.
So thank you, Pam. Thank you, Bobby. And thank you, team and all attendees. I appreciate being here. I am very glad to be here. I always enjoy giving back to the community. I'm involved in a lot of nonprofits as well. and PMI is near and dear to my heart. So a few housekeeping items. Please put questions in the chat channel. We have a very packed agenda today, so we will try to get to questions as we can. The mix for the attendees will be muted. So again, please post all questions in the chat channel. If you have technical problems, also, if you haven't done it enough with Zoom, check your settings, log out of Zoom, log back in, reboot if you have to. Otherwise, post technical questions in the chat channel as well, and one of the PMI team will try to help you. With the packed agenda for today, we have Kevin Lovell as our first speaker coming up as number one. Then at 7:30, we'll have Sabi Lorik. At 7:50, we'll have Barbara Troutline. And then 8:10, we'll have Doug Page. So we will start with you. So Kevin Lovell is a 21-year Army veteran and now serves as a consultant at KPMG. He has provided program and project management services in Europe, Asia, and the US in design and construction, organizational design, and process improvement. He specializes in complex efforts integrating strategic objectives, processes, technology, people, and leadership. Interesting fact about Kevin, his last duty station before he retired from the Army, he came home to serve as a deputy commander for the Chicago office of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. And without further ado, Kevin, you're up.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? Can a couple of people give me a thumbs up? Great, outstanding. So first off, I was reminded by my employer that these views are my own and they don't necessarily represent KPMG's or the United States Army's. However, I will go in depth in a lot of things I learned during my time in the service. So why is this important? Ultimately, we're going to talk about contingency operations in a really tidy conversation. As you can see, their planning is critical to succeed in uncertain environments. And I think we can all, if we were to think about where we were a year ago, right, COVID has been a relatively uncertain environment for us. The Army planning models are world-class, and I think there's some great things that we can take from those. And you're also going to see how, quite frankly, they overlap with PMI's program management standards and guidelines. And I think if you follow, really the key takeaway for you to take here is that planning over following simple fundamentals in planning will help you. Okay, so I served in many different locations. That's who I am on the left. That's who I was on the right, and where I served in the center. I would share with you, though, ladies and gentlemen, that early in my career, when I got the opportunity to go to Fort Benning, Georgia, and train and learn how to be an airborne paratrooper, I learned how to be the multidisciplinary nature of that work, about applying the highest standards in all things, about overcoming natural fears. It takes a significant amount of the ability to overcome fear to jump out of a perfectly good airplane. Contingency operations, and certainly the efforts or the environment that we've seen in the last year in the COVID-19 environment highlight the definition of uncertainty and the need to understand contingencies. They are just as frightening, and they are just as easily able to overcome if you follow simplified frameworks. Here's some references. Quite frankly, they are cures for insomnia, but you'll be able to pull some of the information that I'm going to share from these references. Okay, so contingency operations, they have characteristics and phases. For my analysis, the characteristics on the left-hand side, the ones I've highlighted in red, are the ones that we certainly have seen and are most applicable in the COVID-19 environment. You have interests that are going to be at stake, and you've got some crisis that has been generated. Ultimately, the need to plan and execute is very time sensitive. There's a significant amount of uncertainty, and we're going to end up with resource constraints. The larger the challenge, the less defined the environment will create the greater constraint on your resources. On the right-hand side, the phases, which run chronologically, start with pre-deployment and crisis action. But we certainly have seen the need for deployment and initial actions, along with decisive operations, meaning after some initial deployment and initial actions, then there's a build in that third phase, and then decisive operations, which I think we're in right now. We certainly have not hit redeployment and then pre-deployment for the next effort. The thing that I would like to posit with you, the obligatory dead guy quote, as we often share in the United States military, especially the United States Army, a good plan violently executed now or today is better than a perfect plan that we execute next week. Okay, when we talk about framing an operational environment, we have to understand the current state, and you have to define your desired state. You have to know where you're at, your as is, and you have to clearly understand what your to be is. You don't need to know everything, but you have to understand where you want to go. What is your vision? So that brings us to the elements here that are up top, okay? From there, we are in the position where we can frame our problem, okay? What obstacles are we going to see in the travel, in the journey from the current state to the future state? Those problems or those obstacles are your problem set. And by identifying those problems to get to the problem set, you can then determine what things you need to do to address those problems. That's the developing an operational approach. And from there, you can further work to define and develop a plan. The thing that I would like to posit with everyone is that you're not going to get it right the first time, okay? People often shoot to get a perfect plan and understand what right is or get perfection the first time out of the gate. You're not going to get it right. You're going to get it less wrong, okay? You're going to get a little bit more information each time, and you will ultimately get it a little less wrong. and a little less wrong and a little less wrong each time. There are some elements that I'd like for us to think about here. The principles of war are centuries old, but understanding the importance of applying our resources at the appropriate or decisive point of time and space, where everyone is focused clearly on a defined scope of work, where we want to seize and retain and exploit any kind of initiative. You know, in our own doctrine as professional project managers and program managers, we talk about risk on one hand and uncertainty on the other. What's uncertainty? It's what if something happens that works out in our favor as opposed to a risk that's something that could actively hinder us? Well, are we prepared to seize that opportunity and exploit that uncertainty? The unity of command gets us to the point where we're all working together. We understand the mission and vision that the organization has set for us, and we understand that so we can work together to that common and shared objective, which you see in the center top. And then ultimately, simplicity. You have to have a clear, or I'd recommend a clear, concise, and simple plan where everyone understands not just the broad strokes, but the nuances. Complex plans often crumble under their own weight, especially in uncertain times. Okay, so planning helps leaders ultimately understand the situation, envision this desired future, and helps lay out the effective way of bringing that future about. The communication and coordination that leaders must execute during the planning and implementation phases help align themselves, validate to their own selves internally what their objectives are and what methods they'll use to work towards their objectives, helps align their staffs and organization, helps align their subordinate leaders, and helps align other sponsors and other stakeholders. Now, these things are very high level and fundamentals in the planning execution. Planning is great. The key that brings it all together is leadership. And in the Army's troop leading procedures, we see here we're going to receive a mission. We're going to issue some initial guidance in two. We'll make a tentative plan. We'll start people moving. That's both physically and mentally in many cases for us really as white-collar professionals that probably is getting resources allocated, identified and allocated and assigned to work. We'll do some reconnaissance. In our case, that means we've got certain assumptions and we've got to work to validate those assumptions. We'll complete our plan, we'll issue our plan, and then we're going to rehearse. These procedures or this framework for leadership helps set some things out for us, quite frankly, in a simplified, an overly simplified even framework to make sure that we're centered on our plan and we're centered on our communication and sharing. For anyone that's looked at the standard for program management recently, what I did was I aligned it, quite frankly, it's aligned in a stair-step or waterfall methodology in the graphic, and I pulled that all vertical. And I took those troop leading procedures and laid them out, and you could see how there's this overlap that I referred to in my opening comments here between receiving the mission and the analysis and the courses of action development and analyzing the courses of action here in the military decision-making process. That all really fits into program definition in our formulation and planning phases, and our benefits identification and our benefits analysis. And then by analyzing those courses of action and comparing them, approving them, and then finalizing your plan, we get really into the program delivery space. So we see that these frameworks are fairly similar. They're not overly complex, and it helps us bring some amount of order out of the chaos that we see in contingency operations. Now, leadership brings it all together, ladies and gentlemen. And the most important thing that you can do as an organizational or direct level leader is to lead by example. Why? Because leaders provide purpose, motivation, and direction to their teams, both through their actions and through their words. I'd submit to you that the leadership dimensions, and these are leadership dimensions that I learned at the beginning of my academic career in the early 1990s at Marquette University, that being able to communicate, so your oral communication and written communication now, since we're very distributed and a lot of things happen over text, IM, and email, your ability to take the initiative while solving problems and applying good judgment, and then sticking to your plan at the appropriate level and decisiveness are key to overcoming uncertain or unknown environments. Now, the core leader competencies I've broken out in some greater detail, and I'll share these slides afterwards. The thing that I'd like everyone to understand is that applying fundamentals is inherently important if we want to succeed together. There's a science of planning, and there's an art in leadership. And that art of leadership brings the planning and the execution and the implementation all together. If you keep your plans simple and on time, it's better than perfect and late, but you're never done planning. The plan is nothing. Planning is everything, because the plan will change. The environment will change around us. We will get better information. We will validate some assumptions, and we realize that some assumptions we made are not correct. So with that, I'd like to answer any questions that anybody might have. I know that I ran through these things quite quickly.
So Kevin, that was a great presentation. And actually it reminds me of the OODA loop, observe, orient, decide, and act, which is one of my favorite principles as well. And the Army implements it extremely well here. The first question that came up, Kevin, what are the most important items for the audience to take away on the PMI to Army doctrine overlap?
Yeah, I think the biggest piece, quite frankly, is that the PMI's doctrine is pretty sound, right? And I think the first thing we want to do is we learn doctrine and then we chuck it out the window. We don't want to. We get intimidated by, say, building the work breakdown structure. Oh, I don't want to build 7,000 lines, and then I don't want to have to turn around and do the organizational breakdown structure. And oh man, I don't want to fill out another template for risk management. A whole nother risk register. We almost get crushed by the thought of having to fill out templates and artifacts. But I'd submit to you that taking a step back and realizing what the appropriate level of detail we need will take that anxiety away. So follow the doctrine. The steps work. They've been validated. And then the other piece I'd submit to you is that you have to execute your activities understanding that you're resource constrained. You only have so many people and you only have so many time, right? So much time. So perfection's the enemy of good enough. Just live with what's good enough today, because things are going to change.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Kevin. Really appreciate your time. Our next speaker is Sabi Lorik. He is Chief Information Officer and CxO for Clackamas Community College. Sabi is an internationally recognized speaker, trainer, coach, and Sabi has led multiple diverse clients in their business transformation through project successes, bolstering communications across various departments, and assisted customers in creating effective solutions to complex problems. Sabi is currently working as CIO at Clackamas Community College. And an interesting fact, which Sabi, you're going to have to share a little bit, you were born in the most perfect city in the world. Over to you, Sabi.
There you go. Thank you so much, Laszlo. Really appreciate it. Let's do it. Can you see my screen okay? Give me a thumbs up. Awesome. Are you ready to jump? Let's do it. There you go. Good morning, everybody. My name is Sabi, but first of all, who's Sabi? Right? My full name is Sarabjit Singh Vadach. That's why it's Sabi. Every time I'm ready to board a plane, usually in front of me, there are 2-3 folks. Usually there is Mr. John. And Mr. John hands over his boarding pass to the agent, and the agent says, "Welcome, Mr. John," and Mr. John walks in. And then usually behind Mr. John is Miss Emily. And Miss Emily gives her boarding pass, and the agent says, "Welcome, Miss Emily." Miss Emily walks in. And then I show up with my boarding pass, and the agent says, "Welcome, Welcome. That's why it's Sabi. I'm also known as Selfie Sabi because I always take selfies before I start my presentation. So I've taken all those selfies. The challenge right now for you is if you take a selfie with me and post it on LinkedIn, I will send you a Starbucks gift card. How about that? I want to keep that going. And somebody said, is it Sabi? Is it Sabi? Can I make it more spicy? I was go for it. So they gave me a new name. How about that? Wasabi, right? And I was managing a program with another program manager, which I'm going to talk about today. His name is Dwayne Whitehurst. And he got hurt. He was out for a couple of months. So the team gave me a new name since I was fulfilling two roles at the same time. Dwayne plus Sabi. Can you guess what that is? Dwabi. And then I was attending a presentation, and that the speaker, she brought in this big slide which said Wabi Sabi. How many of you have heard about that? Probably not, right? Wabi Sabi is actually a Japanese proverb. What it says is, we always run after perfection, but there is this beauty in imperfection, which we don't appreciate. I was like, man, that's just like me. I'm going to probably change my name to be Wabi Sabi. Let's talk about my journey. I did my bachelor's in computer science, master's in engineering and technology management from Portland State. I came to United States in the year 2003, and the city I come from is the most perfect city in the world. So if you don't trust me, go to Google and put it in there, the most perfect city in the world, and my hometown will show up. Actually, BBC did a study in 2016 and said, Chandigarh is the most perfect city in the world. There you go. And then people usually say, Sabi, if that's the most perfect city, what are you doing here? I was like, you know what? It became perfect after I left the city. We got a good laugh out of it. Started my journey in an Indian multinational firm as a software developer. Worked for GE Capital over there in India as assistant manager software development. Came to United States. Started my journey as consulting. I had my son. My wife said, no more consulting. You need to settle down. So joined City of Portland as a software developer. Did that for about some time, 3.5 years. Became a project manager. Did that for about 3.5 years. Became a business relationship. Headed an application development team. Became a PMO manager. And I was doing that fine until 2018. My boss, the CTO at City of Portland, said, Sabi, have you ever jumped from an airplane? I was like, no. Like, are you interested? I was like, no. Like, guess what? I'm assigning you to this program. And the program is City of Portland's permit system, which we're going to talk about. We successfully delivered that program on February 10th, 2020, just before the COVID happened. And then I joined Clackamas Community College as a Chief Information Officer. I'm also a professor. I've been teaching at a local community college for the last 12 years. I'm also engaged with PMI. I'm the past president. I love that presidential picture. I'm the past president of the PMI Portland chapter, very similar to Central Illinois. We have about 2,300 members, teach PMP prep course, been mentoring individuals. Involved with SIM, I'm the director of marketing. In the last 12 years, we have given more than $650,000 to students who are pursuing their degree in information systems. Angel investor, leadership coach, speaker, DevOps, all that. But here, what we are here today is to talk about POPs. What is POPs? POPs is Portland Online Permitting System. So the journey started, this system was implemented in 1998 and was never upgraded. So think about in last 20 years, how much has changed. So in the fiscal year 2017, 2018, City of Portland collected $191 million in permit fees. And it was collected by a system which was put together with bandages and everything else. Now City of Portland issued more than 10,000 permits. That amounts to about 3.03 billion in construction value. City of Portland has about 6,000 employees. More than 1,500 employees actually use this system. It's used by 7 different bureaus. Development services, a big one, used by transportation, environmental services, fire, rescue, housing, parks, water, and so on. So let me paint the picture how this project started. So in 2008, what happened? Recession. So what happened? The reduced staffing level within BDS. They said, okay, we need to reorganize. BDS used to be 300. It reduced to 1,500, 150 from 300. So they started looking at technology improvements. They explored other permitting systems, Utah, Winnipeg, and so on. But state of Oregon had implemented Excella. They said, okay, let's go for Excella. So what they issued a sole source with Excella. But City of Portland is a commissioner form of government. There is a mayor and then 4 commissioners. So each commissioner is given a set of bureaus. There are 29 different bureaus within City of Portland. So new commissioner came in and decided, okay, we need to reevaluate that. I don't want to sole source. We need to open an RFP and we need to issue that. So they did that and took about 2 years. And then they selected a vendor and the contract negotiation started. The very first thing, they signed contract with a couple of vendors, one for electronic plan review, one for actually the system. And they said, okay, we're going to go live in 2014, 2015. Then the project was given a name called ITAP. Total cost was close to $12 million. But the very first thing which we started seeing was a slip in project schedule and vendor resource turnover. So what they did, they kept it going for 2 years. It was all in the red, never found the full project schedule. They said, okay, we need to stop this program. We're not going to renew this contract. They bring a third-party program assessment vendor called VIE, and they started this discovery project. And then they started going again in a different direction. And then it wasn't successful. So 2018, when my boss said, Sabi, have you ever jumped from an airplane? That's when I come in and take over the reins. And the very first thing my boss said was, Sabi, get this project done and come back. So just a quick overview about that. But think about all the news outlet. They just love this project, right? Government technology, new paperless building system doomed. It was given a name. A new commissioner comes in. It fires the bureau director, the second one. Permitting project suffers bigger setback to date. Technology screw up. Late paperless system, boondoggle, significant gap in leadership, ditch the contractor, it's on hold. All kind of newses were in this project. So what I'm jumping is in this scenario. So the very first thing what I saw was there wasn't clear direction. It was like, where are we going? There were different ways. So quickly we put together this program roadmap. Was March 2018. Think about that. February took over the project. My boss said, I'm going in front of the council in June, July timeframe, and I need to show them a win. So we quickly created this roadmap saying, okay, what are we doing? What are we tackling? And the first thing which we did was made this as a program rather than a project, looked at the 4 big things. And 4 was the big permitting system divided into sub projects, project docs, and then infrastructure. We made a decision that we are not going to go to the cloud. We're going to stay on premise. And then we also made a decision to not go from Oracle to SQL, because if you have done that project, it's altogether a different ball game to just migrate that. So reduce the complexity, make sure we deliver that business value, and prepare for the future. That was the direction given by by the sponsors. So we looked at, okay, we have 6 projects. How are we going to do it? So we divided into our priorities. Okay, let's deliver the value for the public at large. Let's deliver an e-plan first. Development Hub PDX was another one where it gives the ability for folks to pay online. Contractor app is for a contractor where they can see where their permit is. It really makes it easier for them. And then for internal customers, city employees were Amanda 7 migration, which is the big 100-pound gorilla permitting system. Inspection scheduling is for inspectors. It makes their life easier. They don't have to print. Everything is on their phone. And then inspector app, where they can go and take the pictures and see all the information on their app. So a lot of complex digital transformation projects was kicking off. So let's talk about some of the challenges with this project. The very first one was the siloed approach. Okay, the siloed approach is City of Portland. If you have heard that tagline, "Keep Portland Weird," that is what this means. City of Portland is the only city where there's no city manager. So how do you make any decisions? Right, biggest challenge for us. So all these bureaus, we talked about 7 different bureaus who were involved in that. So how do you, different bureaus report to different commissioners, so how do you make any decision? That was the biggest challenge. So then comes, okay, how are we going to prioritize what goes in these projects? How are we going to, effectively govern this project? At that time, the biggest thing which really helped me was relationships. And that's what I'm going to tell you. Relationships. That really helped me to build that relationship with different bureaus and ability to get this project done. Now, there was another one, program history. Think about this project for 2008 till 2018 had been going on. It's not like folks were slacking. They were really working hard. And they thought that they will get this project done. They were given this promise of this La La Land, which will solve all their problem. Give us your dreams and we'll make it happen. And when that didn't happen, there wasn't a proper closure. So they felt like, there was this resentment among the staff that trust is broken. So we actually implemented a Speed of Trust, Stephen Covey's program, to quickly build that trust. It talks about 13 behaviors to build that trust. And Brene Brown has that Braving model of building that trust. Another one was everybody was watching us, right? You looked at media. They were just watching us to make sure we take this bad step, and then they're going to write about it. So we were under a lot of pressure. So we were trying to flow under the radar, right? so that we don't get into the news. Elected officials were watching us, bureau leadership, city leadership, even friends and family were watching us, right? I'm going to a family dinner. My friends are like, Sabi, how's that project going? Are you going to make it? I was like, come on, buddy. We'll make it, right? So challenges like that all the time. Uh, Another big challenge was think about Microsoft Windows 98 kind of era. And then where are we going? We're going to this new AI machine learning kind of a change. The team wasn't ready. For 20 years, the team has been in this support mode. And then you say, okay, we're going from 98 era to this new technology era. Change. They're not going to change like that. So we had to bring in external resources to help them, to train them, help them support, and go through that change. We use ProSize ad card model for organizational change management, and that was a really good and critical piece in making this project successful. Another challenge, all these mandates. When you're doing this construction project, these are federal, state, local mandates. They do, federal mandates, state mandates, they don't care. When you are implementing a system, they have to be implemented. So think about this. We have a current system where there are three environments. We have dev, test, and production. And then we are in a new system. We have dev, test, staging, and production. So we have to make a change in one. We have to make change in all 7 environments. That was going to take a lot of time. So we had to move at a very fast pace. Technical debt is another one. But what is a technical debt? Old historic code. So when the system was implemented, there were some bugs in the system. There was this bugs in the system. What business did, they exploited them to make their business practices around it. They had their own workflow around it. And what are we doing? We're implementing a system. We are breaking all that. That was another big challenge for us. Bugs was another one. This system which we implemented, it wasn't a new one. It was implemented by so many other jurisdictions for about 2 years, and who would have thought they still had critical bugs in their system? So we had to manage that. Exit is another one. It's an interesting story. When I joined, there was this individual. I went to her cubicle, and on her whiteboard she had written like 287, 286, 285. I was like, what is that? She was like, those are the days which are remaining before I retire. I was like, no, no, no. You are a subject matter expert. You can't retire. So I had to actually work with her, influence her to make sure that she stays with the project until we go live, right? So I had to use like all kind of crazy things, right? My wife will cook dinner for you every month. I will give you, I will bring chocolates every week for you the day you're here. If you want to work from home, I'm talking about 2 years ago when working from home was like, no, 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 you can't do that kind of a thing. And giving her actually another monitor so that she can work effectively. And then there were some which we had to let go, right? So those were some of the challenges for us. What were some of the success strategies? And here's the big one, which is for me. In life we have these 4 zones. We have comfort zone, fear zone, learning, and growth zone. Why do you feel comfortable in comfort zone? Because you feel safe and you feel like things are in control. What happens in the fear zone? Was like, I can't do it, right? Those negative mindset comes in. So what happened when my boss said, Sabi, have you ever jumped from an airplane? I'm assigning you to this program. I quickly jumped into that fear zone and I started looking for excuses I can tell my boss so that I shouldn't do it. And the reason for that is previous 4 program managers were fired. And I was like, okay, why me? Am I the next scapegoat? So I go and talk to my mentor. I was like, hey, this is the project which I've been given. What reason should I give to, escape from that? And my mentor said, Sabi, if anybody can do it, you can do it. I was like, no, no, you're not getting my point. Don't push me in. You need to get me out of this. I was like, no, no, I see you that if anybody can do it, Sabi, you can do it. I wasn't still clear about why I should do it. I come back home and look for another excuse. I talk to my wife. I have small kids. They have games in the evening. I will be missing all that. And she was like, no, no, I take care of the kids. You go and do it. I see you doing it. I was like, I wasn't still clear whether I should do it or not. Until Monday morning, I go back into my office and still not able to find the reason I should do it. I get an email from my daughter and said, Daddy, if a project has failed multiple times, here are the 4 things you can do. And she's 10 years old. She's 10 years old telling her dad how to run a complex project. I directly went into my boss' office and I said, you know what? I found my why. I'm not doing it for anybody else. I'm doing it for my daughter. And there is no force in this world which will stop me in making this project successful. So when you are dealing with these complex challenges in your world, you need that emotional anchor. You need that strong why, which will push you from that fear zone. Because in fear zone, you lack that self-confidence. You are affected by other people's opinions and you give excuses, which I was all doing it. But that why actually pushed me into that learning zone where I extended that comfortable zone. And that's where you build new skills. You build that muscle to deal with new challenges. And if you start doing that multiple times, you will find your purpose in life. You will set new goals and you will live your dream. But journey, my friends, from that comfort zone into that growth zone is through that fear zone. So you need to find that why. And for that why was my daughter. Because there were challenges where I was deep down there, it brought me back up. Another one was two in the box. Previously business leadership tried to lead this project. They weren't successful. Then technology came in and said, okay, technology is a technology product. You need to lead this project. How many times have been that successful where technology is leading a business project? Never. Right? So two in the box. So we had two sponsors, BDS leadership director and technology CTO. They became the sponsors, and then we have a business program manager and a technology program manager. That was really successful. Another one was the executives, keeping them update every week, right? We had a sponsor check-in with a meeting. We had a chief administrative officer. We worked with them. So for the very first time, actually, when we started showing some wins, our this Bureau of Development Services was taken under mayor's office. Never had happened before. Think about the thing. When you start winning, everybody wants you in your team. But when you're losing, everybody's like hot potato. I don't want it. So that was really helped us to make it successful because there's a lot of influence we were gaining with coming under mayor's portfolio. We didn't go for big bang. We went for incremental approach. The team has been struggling for 10 years. They had actually stopped believing that they can actually deliver. So we had to actually put it in small pieces so that we can show a win and the team can start believing in themselves that they can deliver it. That was a big point, which we started doing it. You have to have your program artifacts ready, right? Whether it's your program charter, whether it's your schedule, whether it's your risk management plan, communication, you have to have all that. We actually had an external QA who was auditing us every month on all these, making sure we have all these things. One of the tools which we used, which was really successful, was Sbar. And I will highly encourage you. What's the situation? What's the background? Do your assessment and provide a recommendation. And we use that for a two-way dialogue with our sponsors, and that really helped to build that trust and help to build that critical relationship. We use various communication tools, town hall meetings, open house sessions. Town halls was where we'll go, where we'll invite everybody and say, what questions you have? And open house sessions was, okay, here are the specific demos we're going to talk about, or here's a particular project which we're going to talk about. So it was like this, right? A big room with open house sessions, team leads there, giving an update about different pieces in there. You're talking, you're engaging, and making sure your sponsors there because everybody's watching. So here you see, Jeff Baer and Rebecca, who were the co-sponsors of the project. You want to make sure that your sponsors are there and visible and engaged to make a project successful. And of course, there is Dwayne, right? With still my buddy over there with the cast who got hurt. Make sure you have a great relationship with your vendors. You need to appreciate your team, do your high fives, making sure you are celebrating all the wins, whether it's taking them out for happy hour, whether you're doing celebrating somebody's retirement. Make sure food is there. That's a big motivator, and then making sure everybody's having a great time, and you are that shield which is stopping that all the craziness which they don't have to face, right? But here's the big one which I'm gonna say. No battle plan survives the contact, right? No matter how diligently you plan, you're gonna experience turbulence. It's like, how do you respond rather than react? Because your turbulence won't make that project go wrong, but your overreacting might make it wrong, right? So here's the last one. And I love this slide because being a project manager, it's easy, right? It's like riding a bike, except that bike is on fire, you're on fire, everything is on fire, and you're in hell every single day. Every single day, right? Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. Lightning round, 20 minutes. I'm ready for questions.
Sabi, these are great. Lots of good takeaways for us on running complex projects and understanding multiple stakeholders when you don't even have a clear leader. So Sabi, question from the audience. Please describe your organizational change management strategy.
Yeah, so
in 2 minutes or less, what does that look like to you?
Right. So, the team was about 50 folks who were doing this project. So when I look at organizational change management, I usually look at organizational change management as a three-legged stool. Okay. You have to have your process defined. So what strategy are you going to use to get that done? Right. So we use ProSize ADKAR model for change management. Okay. The second piece of that is communication. How effectively you are communicating. Communicate. So we use different ways of communicating, whether it's team meetings, whether it's presentations, whether it's town halls, whether that's videos, all kind of tools which we use to communicate, because everybody wants to make sure they have a different reception of that. And the third piece in any change is your training. How good you are training your team members to get used to the new system, because it's a big change for them. So we spent a lot of effort in training. So organizational change management, we had at least 3 team members under organizational change management. And then our training team was about 6 folks in there. So putting a lot of effort in training, whether that's training, one-on-one training, video training, recording that and sharing it with them, that really helped us to go live in a successful manner.
Great. Thank you so much, Sabi. Really appreciate the lessons learned from you. Our next speaker is Dr. Barbara Troutline. She is the author of Change Intelligence and the originator of the CQ system for developing change intelligence. So for over 30 years, Barbara has led projects in a wide variety of industries across the globe and trained, coached, and certified change agents, including project managers. Clients served include Abbott Labs, BP, Deloitte, Northwestern University, U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Agency, and the United Airlines. Barbara holds a doctorate in organizational psychology from the University of Michigan. And an interesting fact about Barbara, she's traveled to about 4 dozen different countries and is looking forward to doing more soon. And without further ado, Barbara.
Thank you so much, Laszlo. Welcome, everyone. Thanks so much for the, yes, go blue, absolutely. Thanks so much for the chapter for having me here and for hosting. And another fun fact about me is that here at home, I have 2 teenagers. So at home, I'm an idiot and I love to be around people who think I know something. So thank you so much for having me again. So this is the Chinese symbol for crisis, actually. And as you can see, it has 2 different parts to it, 2 different characters. And one stands for danger, one stands for opportunity. As Laszlo said, I started my business over 30 years ago now in 1989, when we were having a recession. And since then, I've worked with clients, as he just said, around the globe, helping design, implement, execute, and sustain a variety of different kind of projects and transformational initiatives. I actually created the specific approach to leading change, and every project is a change. So every project manager is a change leader during the global financial meltdown of 2009, in response to needing to invent a new way to help myself and my clients through that time of massive uncertainty and fear. So, I love when you get to kind of this point in a conference where you really see a lot of the synergies and connections between what other speakers talked about. And definitely I see a lot of connections between what Kevin talked about and myself, and I'm looking forward to our next presenter too. But it's really easy to think about all the danger that we've been experiencing in the last 12 months with the pandemic and the other crises we're experiencing. That's very obvious. What's not as obvious is that any crisis and any change contains opportunity. And I think one of the greatest opportunities is the opportunity to learn and grow. And that's what we're all focused on here today. Because so often in our projects are fraught with what looks like failure. And I think the opportunity for all of us project managers, project leaders, is to also focus on the growth opportunity that are presented by the challenges, reframing obstacles to opportunities. So our promise for today is to talk about change intelligence strategies for ourselves, our team, and ultimately our organization, and share some science and research-based ways that we can help ourselves and others through change and crisis. So you've heard of EQ, emotional intelligence. Now we're going to talk about CQ, change intelligence, which I believe is a mission critical capability for leaders at all levels. And we're all leaders, regardless of tenure, title, or role, in this time of, massive uncertainty and fear in our workplaces and our world. So it's been my experience, and it was my experience for the first 20 years of my career before I invented CQ or change intelligence, and I use those terms interchangeably, that people who were highly successful in other areas of their careers struggled to lead change, and struggled especially to lead change that sticks. And I wondered why that was. And that again got me down the path of building our teams and our organizations, agility, resilience, and change capability. That's the first arc of change. So why is it that we can be very successful, but struggle to lead ourselves and others through change? And as Laszlo mentioned, I'm an organizational psychologist by training. So I don't know if you've studied the neuroscience of change, but it's very, very fascinating. And it's yielded some information that's really empowering, I think, for all of us that are leading change and managing projects. So what happens is when neuroscientists put electrodes on people's brains and introduce them to a change, the same neuroreceptors fire when we get introduced to a change as when we feel physical pain. So to me, right there is incredibly empowering information, because it says that that resistance that we experience and that fear threat response and the resistance we see in others is not bad and wrong. It's normal and natural. It's literally how our brains are wired and why we've survived as individuals and even thrived as a species. So I think that right there, that's empowering information. And yet, what happens when that fear threat response is evoked? What happens when our brain gets on change? Well, what happens is that all the good stuff that feeds our brain, the oxygen, the glucose, gets sucked down past our necks so we can fight, we can flight, or we can freeze. And what all those three reactions have in common is that change makes us dumber, just like Homer Simpson here. This is Homer Simpson's brain on change. Just when we need our cognitive resources to be smart in leading ourselves and others through change, in terms to pivot, to invent new solutions, to look at things in new ways, to make different innovative, creative decisions, we get blinders on. Our solution space restricts and we go to our dominant, well-learned, habituated responses, and we don't even do those well. That's our brain on change. So this can seem like bad news, but in fact, I think it's actually good news, because while we can't control our knee-jerk autonomic reaction, we can control our more adaptive leaderly response. We can separate that reaction from that response. As I say, in the stress of change, in the stress of our projects, when our IQ goes down, building our CQ is like putting our own oxygen mask on first. We breathe, we separate that reaction from a more adaptive response, because we know we have options. We know we have options as project managers, as leaders, and the more options we have, the more power we have. The more options we have, the more power we have to make ourselves less stressed and frustrated, and also to make ourselves and others smarter in leading through change and crisis. So that's what we're going to talk about, is leading through the arcs of change and crisis. So another thing that neuroscience talks about is neuroscience has identified multiple ways that change and crisis and our projects evoke that fear threat response, multiple ways. And three of them that we're going to focus on is the first, arcs of change. Change threatens our sense of autonomy. So just looking at the COVID, at the pandemic as an example, the pandemic impacts our sense of autonomy for obvious ways, because so much is out of our control and so much unwanted change is forced upon us. It threatens our sense of autonomy. The second R is relatedness. It threatens our sense of relatedness for obvious reasons, through the need for remote working and social distancing. And maybe the most threatening is how the pandemic has threatened our sense of certainty, because the long-term impact and spread is fundamentally unknown and unknowable. So that's the first arc of change, and our opportunity is to put our own oxygen mask on first, so we can move from the danger to the opportunity represented by the crisis. And that's the good news, that there are ways that we can lead. There are ways that you as project managers can lead your projects that can help you move from that knee-jerk reaction to a more adaptive response for yourself and your teams and organizations, to build that sense of agility and resilience and that capability. And that's what the bottom line of what we're going to talk about with building change intelligence for ourselves and others, because we know we have options. We know we have options in terms of how we lead, and the more options we have, the more power we have. So what are those change intelligent options that are available to us? Well, as I always say, just like any project, any change needs engaged people, an effective purpose, and an efficient process. Any change leader, any project manager needs to pay attention to all three. This is very similar. You might remember one of the slides that Kevin showed. He talks about, what does leadership do? Leaders motivate, leaders focus on the purpose, and leaders set the direction. I think that's just another way for head, heart, hands, and action. So I love that. I love that connection there. Actually, by the way, I created an assessment that you can take, a quick online 15-minute assessment that can evaluate, can assess your tendencies to lead from the heart, head, hands, and give you some developmental suggestions. And we have such a small group here today. If anybody's interested in test driving it, just email me. I'm happy to send you an invitation. But the bottom line is that even though we might have a tendency to focus on one or two or some all three, we need to lead in all these different ways to lead ourselves and others through change and crisis. And that is what we're going to talk about now, that even if you have a dominant tendency, all these options are available to us. All these options are available to us, and we have power to lead in all these different ways. So that's what I'm going to do now, go through one at a time, starting with the heart, engaging the people, and how can we start with ourselves? Again, I love what Sabi talked about, that relationships get results. Fundamentally, change in our projects are an emotional journey. It's an emotional journey. And I think that's been even more demonstrated through this last year and all these crises that we're experiencing. Definitely emotional journey that has cut to the core of our common humanity. So starting with ourselves, putting our own oxygen mask on first, we can harness the power of positivity. Positivity is not Pollyannish. In fact, positivity can be defined as hope for the future, wedded to reality, or informed optimism. Martin Seligman, who is the father of positive psychology, he demonstrated that positivity is correlated with better performance in all aspects of our lives, including productivity at work and more satisfying relationship at home. The beauty is that positivity can be learned through building new habits. One of the best habits to build is an attitude of gratitude, and gratitude also reduces stress hormones and boosts our immunity, which are bottom line health benefits we all need right now. So you can build gratitude as a habit, simple ways. Identify 3 things you're grateful for at the beginning of and end of every day. And if you do this regularly, the unconscious brain actually latches on to this new gratitude pattern, and you begin to look for the good even without your conscious attention. You can literally rewire your brain, creating a positivity bias. Moving from yourself to your team, just as we are so rightfully focused on our physical safety, building psychological safety on our team should be our dual focus. Research by Amy Edmonston at Harvard and with Google teams clearly show that the #1 factor in high performance teams is psychological safety. Sabi talked about that trust too, right? I believe in times of crisis, times of massive change, trust is the #1 currency. And in any time of leading our projects and leading change, people need to feel safe to say what needs to be said, to speak their truth, because as we all know, what you see depends on where you sit. What you see depends on where you sit. What it looks like, the change looks like on your project team is very different from how the sponsors are looking at it, or the end users, or your cross-functional peers. What you see depends on where you sit, and we need to build that sense of psychological safety. What's the #1 way to build psychological safety is sharing our challenges, sharing challenges with each other. What better time to do that now when we're all experiencing so many challenges personally and professionally? So that is just another way how we lead through this time of massive change and crisis can create an enabling foundation to grease the skids for all the inevitable changes and projects yet to come. I love that Stephen Covey talked about that building relationships with others is like putting a deposit in your emotional piggyback with them, in your emotional bank account, because in times of change on your projects, you're going to have to make a withdrawal. You can make them dinner, but you're going to have to make a withdrawal at some point. So that's the first thing. So I would encourage you, is this is something you can do right away, this morning with your teams. You can ask what you talk about this, leading the heart, and ask what is one best practice example of leading the heart through this time of crisis, leading ourselves, leading our teams, leading our organizations. Again, have that conversation. It's a great way to, again, show that we've transformed obstacles to opportunities, and we've really fostered that growth mindset and continuous improvement culture. So moving on to enlightening the head arcs, as I say, starting with ourselves, we can refresh our frame. We can refresh our frame. Back to Martin Seligman, his research shows that the first step to building a more positive mindset is to separate fact from fiction. Separate fact from fiction. And remember that our opinions are not facts, and neither are the opinions of so-called experts or pundits. I would encourage you to think about what are facts versus fleeting fear-based thoughts. That I love the Dalai Lama quote, when we change the way we look at things, when we change things, we look at change. I encourage you to limit our exposure, really limit our exposure, not just to the virus, but to what's viral out there. Literally, again, our immune systems go down when we're exposed to stressful stimuli. So be a selective consumer of information. Seth Godin, a leadership guru, he advises us to curate our content and sift through information. SIFT is an acronym. It says stop, investigate the source, find better coverage, and test for validity. I love that. The other thing we can do for our team is we can, and again, hooking and hinging back to something that Sabi said, we can refresh the frame and reframe reality for our team too. Starting with the why. I love a quote by Viktor Frankl, who was the, author of Man's Search for Meaning. He was a psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor. He said that life is never made unbearable by circumstance, but only by lack of meaning and purpose. Only by lack of meaning and purpose. So often in the midst of change or crisis or problems on our projects, we have our heads down. We have our heads down in the muck and mire. As a leader, lift our heads up, point to the progress, show our teams how far we've come and the successes that we've had, big and small, and celebrate together. Again, that's one of the best ways that we can build resiliency for ourselves and others, is showing the progress that we've made and how we've, again, moved from fixed to a growth mindset, and we've taken on these challenges and we've been successful together. That's one of the most powerful ways to build that sense of resiliency. So again, I would ask you to think about, to reflect upon, what are some examples of how we've done exactly this on our team, and how can we celebrate those together. Finally, moving on to the hands, equip the process. I love the expression that the pessimist complains about the wind, the optimist expects the wind to change, and the leader adjusts the sails. So putting our own oxygen mask on first, I think we can ask ourselves first, how can we get unstuck and find our moorings for safety and stability so we can set sail for new horizons? Because we need both our sails and we need our anchors. I love that. Agility rhymes with stability. Agility rhymes with stability. We need both. Our habits, actually, and our routines can help ground us and help and cope with uncertainty and change in uncertain times. And I believe that stable grounding is the foundation upon which we build agility. So we need both. And I think that's fantastic. I also love a quote by, getting back to what Kevin said about direction, quote by a song by Joan Baez in the tumultuous 1960s. She says that action is the antidote to despair. Action is the antidote to despair. Again, planning is great. Let's just get into action and get that plan into action, because we know another change management maxim 101 is that action has power and magic to it. Take a first step. It will build momentum, demonstrate those quick wins, and it'll show people again that we can succeed and we can do this together. Moving on to supporting our team, review and reinvent processes. So again, don't just automate, but obliterate, as we used to say back in the re-engineering days. That crisis offers a great opportunity, not just to say, let's convert this meeting to virtual, do we need it at all? Instead of just thinking outside of the box, we can bust the box. Change enables us to break chains. We can bless and release old ways of seeing, doing, believing, and even succeeding. And another research, you probably know Jim Collins and his team at Harvard. He wrote Built to Grade and Good to Last. Then they also studied what factors make organizations thrive and be successful over the long term. So why the mighty, as they say, are successful over the long term. And they identified two key factors. One, constancy of vision. They had that true north. They had that mission focused, focus on that inspiring single consistent mission. That was one. But two, flexibility of process. They took different routes to get there. And that's exactly what we're talking about here by equipping the process, helping the hands. So again, what's a best practice example about how you and your team have put this into practice, both with yourself as well as your team together, and perhaps more broadly on your projects. So again, this is a nice one-page cheat sheet, a nice one-page summary of what can we do to change intelligently, lead through change and crisis. And again, just like any project needs engaged people, an effective purpose, and efficient process, any of us as project managers need to pay attention to all three. We can pay attention to all three, and by starting with ourselves, putting our own oxygen mask on first, we can then, again, develop that agility, resilience, and change capability that will build an enabling foundation, not just to lead through the changes of today and the crisis of today, but all the time into the future. I love the quote by William Buffett that it's only when the tide goes out do we see who's been swimming naked. Only when the tide goes out that we see who's been swimming naked. And so I encourage you to look at every one of your projects as a pop-up learning lab. Both to get the job done, to get results, as well as to build relationships and build this foundation of change capability. Absolutely. So this is, again, something that is, as I always say, CQ plays well with others. And you can see how it integrates very nicely with whatever your project management approach is, with whatever your change management approach is, ProSci, ADKAR, others, because again, it adds that often missing ingredient of not just managing our projects, of not just managing people and training and communications, but really change leadership for ourselves and our team. So I think I'll stop there and see if there's any questions. I'll just show this in case anybody's interested in more resources. Contact me anytime if you'd like to test drive the assessment. Go to my website, because there's lots of free resources that you can download, a couple of free chapters in my book. Go to projectmanagement.com actually, and I have several webinars that I've given there. And of course, I'm looking forward to seeing you all again in May when I'll be presenting on this more in depth at the May dinner meeting. So Laszlo, what questions do we have?
So Barbara, I love that you led your first slide with the Chinese symbol of danger and opportunity, the yin and the yang, that we always need to look at, take a step back and back to the OODA loop, and how all of our speakers are on the same theme of observe, orient, detect, and act. And you lead us through how we can actually build and exercise our own change intelligence capability. So during your presentation, you mentioned having an assessment that a PM can take to diagnose and develop their change intelligence, and that you actually have a global database of change leaders from around the world. So what insights can you draw from those analytics that would be informative and actually actionable takeaways for project managers like us?
Yeah, thanks so much for asking. Right now, there's over 15,000 change leaders around the world in a variety of different industries and different levels, from the C-suite to the front line. And so I think probably the most interesting insight for project managers is that the style of leading change of, just going back to this, of most project managers, but not all, but a significant portion of project managers is leading from the hands. And of course, project managers have a lot of tools and spreadsheets and models and methods to lead change, the tactics of change, getting it done. And those are all necessary. However, we know that they're not sufficient. When we look at the C-suite as executives, as senior leaders in organizations, the dominant style is the head, leading from the head. They focus on vision, mission, strategy. So right there is an actionable insight for project managers, that what's one of the frustrations is sponsors blessing and abdicating, not being engaged. So again, how can we follow the platinum rule, not the golden rule, right? The platinum rule, do unto others as they want to be done. How can we speak to about our projects in a way that's going to hook and hinge it to the vision, mission, strategy, to what's important to the senior leaders, folks on the front line. And that we're, again, a lot of times our end users or those we're trying to get on board with our projects that we get frustrated because they're resisting, right? Their dominant style on the front line, you would think maybe hands, execution. No, it's heart. Because folks on the front line, leaders on the front line, what their job is to get people on board, right? Is to communicate, to engage. And a lot of times they don't get it themselves, and they haven't had that soak time or enough information to really kind of wrap their heads around how is this going to impact the people, and have we really demonstrated that we've engaged the people, we've heard them, we've listened to them, we've incorporated their fears and concerns into the resolution strategy. So as project managers, how can we build relationships to get results, right? How can we really do a lot more than we even think might be necessary in terms of really bringing people on board? Participation not only leads to better quality decisions, it leads to greater ownership. How can we, again, another reframing opportunity, whether it's in our sponsors, whether it's in our end users, whether it's on our project team, how can we reframe what looks like resistance in others from our enemy to our ally, and use it as a powerful source of information to change the only thing we can, which is ourselves, right? And again, not fundamentally changing ourselves. No one needs a personality transplant, but again, adapting our influence and engagement strategies.
Thank you so much, Barbara. Really appreciate it. So we've heard from great speakers, from Kevin to Sabi to Barbara, and now coming up, we've got Doug Page. Doug is a senior principal product manager at Servicenow. Doug has worked in process improvement, project management, and Agile since 2001. We don't want to date you here, Doug. Primarily from a software perspective, having worked for IBM, CA Technologies, and currently Servicenow. He's based in Montreal, Canada, enjoys hockey and running, and used to enjoy traveling. So as soon as we can open up, I'm back out there traveling as well, Doug. An interesting fact about Doug, he and his wife, Natalie, spend the weekend skiing with their two boys who are 9 and 6. So over to you, Doug.
Doug, you're muted.
Thank you. I said I work for a software company. It's pretty much t-shirts every day. So I woke up this morning, and Barbara, I'm going to use this as my appreciation for tonight. I remembered how to button a shirt, so that's good news. Starting off in a good direction. What I'm going to talk to you about this morning is a case study. There's a very long name for the title of this presentation, but it's really a case study about a transformation of an organization, moving from traditional project delivery to a more hybrid style of delivery. And we're going to talk about why they did that and how they did that. So what we'll walk through is the customer. I can't share their name. They're not a public reference for us, but I can walk you through the challenges that they had, how they tried to align their strategy to the work that they were doing, and then finally the outcomes that they got from doing this. Just a couple of words on ServiceNow, because you may or may not have heard of ServiceNow. And if you've heard of ServiceNow, it might be because, hey, isn't that our company's help desk solution? So our company's vision, and Barbara, this goes back to the purpose that you had shared in the heart. Our vision is to make the world of work better for people. And we actually do that through an entire platform. So I'm part of our project and agile management solution, what we call IT business management. But this platform has a whole bunch of solutions on it, plus the ability to build new solutions, whether we build them or our own customers build them. And you'll see in the middle here, this Now platform. That's the basis of the platform itself. It includes a lot of good functionality that we use in our project management world. You'll see there's the notion of workflows. So how do we embed processes into our organization by using the platform to do that? Also integrations. A lot of times when we're talking about project management, there's integration to other tools that help us manage our projects. And that could also be financial management tools. How do we understand the financials of our projects? Resource management tools. How do I know the people that are available in my organization, what their skills are? The platform has machine learning. So how can we leverage that to improve our project estimating capabilities? all good stuff that is leveraged across here. And the platform is very flexible to the point where you can use it for things like vaccine management, whether that's actually managing the distribution of vaccines or tracking people that are getting vaccinated. There's a lot of cool stories. Don't have very much time for that today. What we want to talk about is COVID and the pandemic and how that has forced organizations to change. And one of the coolest articles I've read over the last year is this Harvard Business Review article, and it's called Develop Agility That Outlasts the Pandemic. And when I heard Barbara speaking about, and I'm going to paraphrase here, about blowing up the process rather than just kind of redesigning the process, this is really what this article challenges us to do, is to say, during the pandemic, as organizations, we've been forced to make decisions about investments, projects very quickly, and to execute on those investments, those projects very quickly. And for most organizations, I won't say this is your organization's case, but for most organizations, they've had to throw out the traditional PPM intake, evaluation, business case process. Just took too long. They had to make decisions quickly. And this article, they actually interviewed executives and asked them to say, you had to make decisions very quickly. Do you think the decisions were worse because you didn't take the normal time and you didn't follow that normal process? And overwhelmingly, the answer was no, we thought the decisions were good. So this article basically says, if the decisions weren't that bad, how do we develop new processes, new ways of working, and we don't just go back to the office and start doing things the way they were before. Now, this specific client we worked with was in the healthcare industry, and there's some specific industry things that are going on that are worth understanding. So it's really, if you look at this bottom paragraph, the industry is shifting from focus on treatment to focus on prevention, and executives are challenged to implement new technology. So there's a big transformation from an industry perspective. And for our specific customer, they had the objective and also the challenge. They wanted to deliver modern services to improve the associate experience. And that's really about like the consumer driven IT. So we've all got, cool phones, cool tablets. The technology that we use in our day-to-day life is really easy to use. You download an app on your phone. You generally don't go to a training class on how to use that. It's so intuitive and easy to use. And, that has in most cases surpassed the usability of the technology we use at work. And that's a big problem. And that's not just in the healthcare industry. We see it in every industry, but a lot of our clients are in the financial services industry. They have the same challenges for their own employees and for their customers. How do they deliver simple experiences that are powerful? But you'll see the second half of this this sentence is really the challenge.
Real quick, it sounds like you're talking from a deck. It's not being currently shared.
Oh, sorry. Let me come back here. I don't know. It doesn't show me that I can share my screen. Do I have the right? Do you see this slide here?
Yes.
Can if I change this slide, do you still see it? Do you see this? Where it says new, does it say new ways of working for you?
Yes, it does.
Okay, so I'll just come back here. I won't go back all the way, but that was really their challenge, was delivering these modern services, but with a legacy model. So they were in a very traditional project management model, and probably like a lot of the organizations that you either work with or work for, they're trying to transform the way that they deliver work. And sometimes I don't even use the word project when I talk about that sentence, because it's become such a broad topic of just how we plan and deliver work. So they're moving away from this legacy model of delivering, and there was two major complications. So the first is this new ways of working. This company had decided they were going to implement SAFe. So they were going to have certainly some elements of traditional project management, traditional project funding in a lot of areas of the organization, still having project managers. Executives still want to see those timelines. They want to know when things are going to go live. And at the same time, they're implementing SAFe. They're going to be delivering in an iterative fashion with very little commitment on long-term deliveries. And like a lot of the speakers have already talked about, I think, Sabi and Kevin kind of referred to this. We're doing work to change the way that we work at the same time as we're delivering some of the most important projects. So they're delivering these complex new systems that are supposed to deliver on the promise of the, better usability at the same time as they're kind of changing the way that they work. So that in itself is very challenging. This next slide talks about the challenges that customers have just from an overall perspective. When we start with a business strategy, and we've got the promise of value that you kind of see on this red line. Why don't we deliver the value that we said we were going to deliver? One of the first things is poor communication and tracking of that strategy. So if we develop strategy in a boardroom and it never leaves that boardroom, that's a huge problem, because the people in the organization. This goes back to Barbara's point about kind of the leadership part, about getting everyone on board with the same objective. If I know how my work I'm doing today aligns to that strategy, the organization's going to be much more successful. But that's not an easy thing to do, and not all organizations do that well. The next piece is we get to planning. So we're not yet at the execution level. We're just you could think of as at the portfolio level. How do we decide what we're going to do? As we move to more complex models for planning, so we've got traditional portfolio management. Now we've got SAFe. There might be pockets of Scrum or other agile activities. We have a very complex environment where, without common planning tools, we're probably going to create a lot of disorganization in our organization. And then finally, we get to the actual level that the work is being done. This is where the project manager would be, but now we also have Scrum teams working at this. We've got other tools that I'll talk about in a second coming in here. And because of that lack of common tooling and the connection between those, things don't get executed as effectively as they should be. And at the end, we don't deliver what we should have. It's kind of like walking across the room with a bucket of water, but the bucket's got a whole bunch of holes, and we're losing water as we go across the room here. So how do we, as Servicenow, as a software vendor, how do we help clients kind of tie this all together? And we really help three different levels of the organization. The first level is the strategy level. So we have them define their strategy. They're actually capturing this in the software. So, we don't help them with the change management part. We don't coach them on how to develop strategy. There's consultants out there that help them do that. We help them capture and communicate that. So what is the strategy? How do you measure success in that strategy? So the strategy can't just be, we want to increase revenue. It's like, what are the goals? How, just like you would say a project is green, yellow, red, how do we do that at the strategic level? And then this is also the level of the organization where we make big bets. So I want to invest certain amounts in certain portfolios or certain strategies or certain products, depending on how that organization does their funding. And then that flows down to the next level, which is the alignment level. This is what we could think of in traditional project management as the portfolio level, where people are deciding based on resource, financial constraints, this is the work that we should be doing. And then that brings us to the execution level. And one of the unique things about what we do is we capture all this on this single platform that I spoke about. So whether the customer is doing Kanban, Scrum, SAFe, I don't have it listed here, traditional project management, or what we see as the reality, and most of our customers today, they're doing hybrid. There's some examples of people using Azure DevOps or Jira in the organization, and they're using Scrum, and then we're also managing projects, and somehow we have to bring this all together. And just to kind of complicate that now, we've got conversational tools, and they've become super important in this new environment, this kind of work from home, work from anywhere environment, because we don't have that Monday morning project meeting in the office where everyone gets together and kind of gets on the same page about what's going on. We would house in our system what I would call the structured data of the project. So what are the tasks? When are they due? Who's responsible for them? But these conversational tools, whether that's Slack or Microsoft Teams, those are the two that we integrate with out of the box, but there are, of course, others. they held all the conversational, the unstructured data from the project team. So if someone's responsible for that task that I just spoke about, they might say, hey, I have no idea what I'm supposed to be doing here. What's this project about? I have questions. They're going to have those conversations in these other tools. So we actually link those together to make sure that everyone is on the same page about what's going on. And then we link to traditional planning tools, whether it be Microsoft Project, Jira, ADO. Those are all strung together. So how do customers implement this, like our healthcare company? How do they implement this successfully? Well, I didn't define this model, our company did. And I don't think we've invented anything that's revolutionary here. I think it actually relates to what a lot of the other speakers have talked about. It's just a different model to do this. There's really 4 steps to implementing a solution in the ServiceNow platform. The first is to envision the value. So that's really to say, what are we going to do with the product? What does success look like for us, and how do we make that work? So then there's the create value, where we actually go and create that value. Then we validate the value, and then we come around and we champion that success. So let's talk about each one of these in detail. So that envision value, where we're trying to create a picture, this is one of these situations where we're actually using the product to implement the product. So we have road mapping technology where people can define, hey, we're going to do resource management first, or we're going to do safe first, or we're going to do execution first. And they can really identify that based on what are their priorities as an organization. What are the things, we talked a little bit about, some of the other speakers talked a lot about delivering something first, getting something out, getting those wins. I think Barbara referred to this. You have to deliver value to keep momentum going. The idea of like saying, we funded this project, talk to us a year and a half, and we'll see if we have something, doesn't really fly anymore. So being able to roadmap this out is very important. And then you want to create the value. This is really the project management of rolling this out. And of course, everyone will have their own kind of best practice. We deliver best practice on our platform. So one of our goals is to make our clients successful. We have a very high renewal rate of our clients, and that we kind of take pride in. So we do anything we can to make them successful. So one of the things we give to them is to say, hey, if you're going to implement, I don't know if you can see how detailed you can see the screenshot, at the very top left, it says Project and Portfolio Management Foundation. So for each different area of the platform, we have best practice on how you roll this out. And you can see the planning phases here: initiate, plan, execute, deliver, close. And across the left-hand side are the different areas. So what type of project management, what kind of architectural reviews, the design and build, the testing, all the different areas within project management that you need to leverage. And then you need to go and validate that value and say, did we deliver the value that we said we were going to do? That's really important because, and I think, the last kind of 5 years there's been a big focus in the project management community around benefits realization. We can't just deliver projects and not come back and say, did we deliver on the business case that was originally put forward to approve that project? That's important from a learning perspective to really know if we've delivered. And we provide customers with out-of-the-box reportings to say, what value did we provide in different fiscal periods? Because obviously finance wants to know when these benefits happened. And then also by category. So those benefits, this is an example of financial benefits. They could also, of course, be non-financial benefits. But in this case, is it an increase of revenue? Is it a decrease in cost? Is it something to do with risk? It's different. It's important to capture the types of benefits that we had. And then the last area here is champion success, where we kind of go out and we tell the story. That's an important thing to celebrate and have as that appreciation at the end of the day. Part of this is also to make sure that we continue to get better. And that really fits nicely into an innovation portal where we can capture ideas to say, hey, we went live with something, we delivered something, but how can we continually make it better? So this is an innovation portal where it's basically an idea portal, innovation portal, where people can easily submit ideas. So rather than coming to people and say, hey, you want to make this better, I'm going to slap a 12-page business case at you, give us 3 pieces of information, and we can kind of apply some lean thinking to take to that intake process. where we're capturing a little bit of information. And if it looks interesting, something we want to do, then we'll go and capture more information around possible costs, resourcing impacts, and all that. But it really makes this social, and it allows for the people that are using the system to take ownership for it. And then just one final slide to kind of summarize the benefits that the customer got. So they had, if you just look at these three circles at the bottom, there was one platform from visibility and decision making. So all the information is in one place. And I didn't talk about this too much, but we connect a lot of different parts of the organization. So a lot of our customers are using us for IT service management or IT operations management. So if you think about these projects, in a lot of cases, they're technology projects. We're connecting that technology as kind of the center of the organization. So the project piece is just how do we evolve those applications? The service management is how do we support them? The ITOM, or our IT operations piece, is how we kind of manage those when they're in production. So an organization gets complete visibility on that application. Where do we have problems from a customer delivery point of view? Do we have a lot of incidents or problems with this application? What's our roadmap, the project management part? What's our roadmap for this application? So that for a lot of organizations, that kind of single pane of glass is really important for them. And then they wanted to integrate SAFE in their environment for scaling work. So the ability to, because you think about like large financial organizations, healthcare in this case, they need their traditional project management from a risk perspective, from a governance perspective. They cannot become just like a software company and go 100% agile. They need those project management processes to help guide what happens in the organization. But they are trying to what we call scale work to deliver faster through SAFE or other agile methodologies. And they don't want to do that in silos. So being able to combine those together was important. And then
that was a great presentation.
Yeah, sorry.
A lot of great takeaways, especially to help us improve our approach and our processes. I'd like to finish up with a question from the audience. Doug, when implementing a technology solution to support PPM and Agile, what role does organizational change management play in this process?
Yeah, I think that's huge. And I think it's something that, people that work for software companies like myself, we have to encourage customers to think about that more. Because I'd like to say, like, we don't suggest that the software is the silver bullet. Some of the biggest part is going to be that organizational change management to make sure that this is done correctly. The answer to that is it plays a huge part, and we really encourage customers to find the right partner to help them on that part of the journey to be successful.
So on this Friday morning, we had a fantastic lineup of speakers, starting with Kevin, then Sabi and Barbara, and now wrapping up with Doug. So to bring this session to a close, Pam, Bobby, and the entire PMI Central Illinois chapter team and I would like to thank our esteemed speakers for taking the time for this great knowledge sharing session. We'd also like to thank all of you for attending and participating this morning and sharing your valuable time with us. Now, please stay online for a few more moments. Bobby has a few items and a quick networking session lined up for all of you. In addition, our speakers, I do believe, correct me if I'm wrong, some of their decks will be available, and feel free to reach out and contact our speakers. The contact information is available. Thank you all again. Have a great Friday. And Bobby, over to you. Round of applause for everybody. Bobby, you're up.
Thank you, Laszlo. First of all, I want to thank all of the speakers again for investing their time, and Laszlo as well. Investing your time and effort to our local PMI chapter. We do have a breaking it down session, 8:40 to 9 a.m. We'll talk a little bit more around what were your aha moments, what were your lessons learned, what will you take back to your team and organization, and that will follow immediately after the session. That's a different Zoom credentials, and if you need that, just please send me a message here on the chat. We'll share that with you. There are some other events in March with our chapter. We have another Lunch and Learn, March 24. A lot more events for our chapter. Please do check our website, pmi-cic.org. Hopefully, if you're not joining us on the 8:40 session or immediately after this, you took some really great, valuable information that you can apply to yourself personally, to your team, to your organization, more importantly as well to your family. These are very trying times, and there's been great presentations around caring for ourselves, caring for our team, and caring for our organization. I think that was the main thing, the main concept that I really learned today. So thank you again. We will, Mary, I saw your chat, we'll share the Zoom link to you. Excuse me. Have a great Friday weekend, and have a great day. Again, have a great rest of your week. We do appreciate you, and take care. Hope to see you again soon, and hopefully see you face to face as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Bobby.
I will
Thank you.
on and post that Zoom link for the next session.
You want me to post it in the message box?
Yeah, if you could, thank you.
Oh, okay.
Let me
Well, it's on my other computer.
I
Hold
think
on.
I have it up.
Do you have it where you can
Yep.
just put it in this chat? All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh, awesome.
I will start that session now, and let Christine know if anyone needs that credential again.
Pam went ahead and put it in there in the chat box, so everybody can grab it from there. And I might have to actually start it, Bobby, because I think I'm the licensed user on it. Or Ruben. Okay, I'm falling off. I'm gonna go to the other one.
Thank you. Sorry, I was on mute. I'll stay here. All right, it looks like it's just us. So did you guys get the links that you needed or anything? Okay. All right, then I'm gonna go ahead and close this one out. We can jump on to the next. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.